Okay, everybody, welcome. Happy Tuesday. January 13th, 2025, 2026. January 13th, 2026, and wild events continue around the world. I want to show you a perspective, again, that I mentioned yesterday, that I think we in the Baltics can perhaps shed some light on for what's happening in Iran, in Venezuela. As usual, I'm going to swing back and forth between freedom, money, and some politics because things are just so wild. Here's the old power trend line, not in log scale this time, but in linear. Thought it might be interesting just to show you. In linear scale, look at how big the boom was of 2017. Right. And look at how big the boom was of 2021, the double boom. Okay. Specifically over, sometimes you kind of, myself included, would lose it on log scale, right? The trend line here is only $3,000, but the price hit 20. Similarly here, the trend line is only $18,000, but the price hit 60, almost 70 here. So they're big moves. Now let's look. Not good enough of a zoom. Let's look here. All right, so here's 2021. I'm going to leave the tooltip off for a second. As the world continues to burn, a lot of people wonder why Bitcoin is not going up. It's going to go up eventually, but it takes time. And if you see what happened here, all right, we had to wait that full year before we all realized that SBF had 0 Bitcoins in FTX. And we go all the way down to the bottom here. And if we go all the way down to the bottom here, by the end of next year, 60, 70,000, I think is totally in play. So caution. It's not buy, not sell advice, but DCAing is good, hodling's good. If you need to take chips off the table for whatever reason, it's good. Not financial advice, but it takes a long time. All right, hyper-Bitcoinization is not around the corner for a variety of reasons, which I'll continue to talk about. I want to show you Turkey. All right, this is the balance sheet of Turkey. The Turkish central bank, essentially. It's the base money, okay? So it's the most economically equivalent money supply to Bitcoin, linear scale, all right? And I don't do, local politics so much with different countries. Like, it's easiest, and I understand the most myself, the history of the US, the UK financial system over the last couple hundred years. Turkey, of course, is the continuation of a very old, centuries and centuries of civilizations. But they're susceptible to the problems that everybody else is susceptible if you take over the money supply. And the one thing I put on here, which I think is quite interesting, especially in light of Donald Trump's lawsuit against the Federal Reserve and Jay Powell announced over the weekend, is if you look back to 2021, Erdogan, the dictator of Turkey, all right, the illiberal democratic leader of Turkey, fired his central bank governor, Mr. Agbal. I don't know much about him. I just know that was what happened. Brought in a new guy who actually decided to fight inflation with lowering interest rates, which was a novel concept. And you see the size of the money supply. Okay. In the scope of 5 years, they go from 350 billion, all right, when this guy took over, base money. Keep in mind, I've been following base money since about here, 2018. So they only doubled that from 2018 to 2021. And from 2021 until now, all right, over 10x, 12, 14x, whatever that number is. Massive. 45, 47% per year compounded. Insane numbers. All right. And yet, even with 4.5 trillion Turkish lira to the balance sheet, it's no problem for Bitcoin. This is the size of the Bitcoin network in Turkish lira. All right, we're worth 75 trillion Turkish lira versus a 4.5 trillion Central Bank of the Republic of Turkey, or Turkiya. Sorry, I guess I should be calling it Turkiya now. Central Bank of the Republic of Turkiya balance sheet. As you do with Bitcoin, most of the passing occurred in 2017. Here it actually occurred even in 2018. Okay, so no, it occurred in it occurred in 2017 as well. Thought that could have been wrong. Most of the smaller countries, Bitcoin has already passed as far as value goes in mid 2017. Now, Bitcoin is, 100 times higher. Sorry, 20 times higher. Sorry, 20 times higher. 17, 18. On paper, it's actually lagging, though. It should be 100 times higher, which is interesting. All right, the trend, which it should be the power trend, it's lagging. So again, here we have an interesting drop in our power curve. And we're just going to have to see how this plays out, because Bitcoin, like in many other scenarios, is lagging. Let's go to the dollar. All right. Looks better here. Not speaking of the numbers as far as bigger or smaller. Of course, it's smaller than the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. But if the target is 39% on the power curve and Bitcoin is 27, 28%, then it's a much better looking curve here in dollar terms. Still a power curve in Turkish lira, but interesting that Bitcoin is not keeping up. And by the way, I generally think these are bullish signals. Like I do believe, to use that term, believe in this curve. All right, even though it's not a great R squared, even though yes, it's a less used currency, not as liquid, not a global currency, you can still price Bitcoin in Turkish lira and measure the difference. still doing fine, doing quite well, right? Being 16, 17 times larger. I need to start just showing this in a multiple instead of a percent. It'd be easier. But we're going to stay soft here for a while until Bitcoin turns around. So again, this is why I'm not, just caution you before you follow the next YouTube thumbnail that says Bitcoin's going to 1 million or Bitcoin's going to 0. There's a trend to these things, a natural state of things, and Bitcoin's doing just fine. All right. Going back to Iran, which is a highly closed, obviously corrupt, brutal dictatorial regime, it's just destroyed the Iranian central bank 200 times higher. If we take this off, there you see how small the balance sheet of the Iranian central bank actually is. And again, as was noted yesterday, the internet's closed there, but even when the internet's not closed, it's very hard to get on the Central Bank of Iran's balance sheet website and get the data. But so I only have the data from basically a year ago. So it's higher, no doubt. It's probably somewhere up here. 15 trillion real. We know where the exchange rate's going, but nonetheless, that's what it is. By the way, it's black market exchange rate here, so the worse the exchange rate, the higher this orange number is going to be, and that's what Bitcoin does. Even better than the dollar, I would argue. So, to be clear, the argument here is the power curve is how networks grow. Bitcoin is growing according to a power curve, this nice gradual curve. I would take it as fairly bullish, right? When it's low, it's fairly bullish that it can go higher. Simple statement, but that's how I would look at this. All right. I want to go back to some politics. We're going to go back to charts as well, but this is such a wild time in the world, very important time for freedom, liberty. Great account if you don't follow it, Vicegrad, Polish. It's a Polish outfit, Vicegrad 24, but it's Vicegrad countries are Poland, Hungary, Czechia, and Slovakia. In January 1991, in Vilnius, the Soviet Union revealed its true face. After Lithuania became the first Soviet republic to declare the restoration of independence on March 11th, 1990, the Kremlin refused to accept the loss of control. Less than a year later, the USSR attempted to retake the country by force through military pressure, intimidation, and outright violence. On the early morning of January 13th, 1991, Soviet troops and special units stormed the Vilnius TV tower and the Radio and Television Committee building. Unarmed civilians came out to defend their country, their media, and their right to be free. So they brought the tanks out, crushed a bunch of people, didn't know what they were doing at all, just tried to quell a revolution. As a result of the attack, 14 Lithuanians were killed. That number is actually higher because other people died, like heart attacks and I don't know. It's actually a little bit higher. And around 900 were injured. They were killed for seeking to escape the Soviet prison of nations. Later, in an attempt to distance himself from responsibility for the deaths, Mikhail Gorbachev claimed he had no knowledge of the operation and had given no such orders, which is proved many ways to be false. The January events in Vilnius became a symbol of the collapse of the Soviet myth of brotherly peoples and a voluntary union. Until its very end, the USSR was willing to hold on to its colonies only by force of arms. All right, so recommend this. You can watch the clip here. People coming out. Soviet, Russian soldiers trying to quell the revolution, and people died. Now, here's a very important point. I mentioned this yesterday, and it's extremely, extremely important, essentially, and especially because of what's happening in Iran. Even in the final months of the USSR, okay, so people think that, and generally it was, all right, you can say in broad terms, 14 people or 20 people, and again, five were killed in Latvia, my country. I don't think in Estonia there were actually any deaths, but 20 to 30, all told, in the Baltics for ending a 50-year occupation of a dictatorship. The Soviet Union is, a lot of people would say that's not so bad. Again, for us, every death extremely important, especially against a maniacal regime from Moscow. But yes, you can say relatively peaceful was the secession and ending of the Soviet Union. Secession is actually even the wrong word. It's that assumes that we meant to be a part of it in the first place. It was always known as an illegal occupation for 50 years, even in America. But here's the key point, all right? Even when the USSR was so weak economically, they couldn't get by without loans every month from Bush Sr. and the Americans. As the Russians were terrorizing the people of the Baltic states with not only physical brutality, but having cut off food and gas imports to starve the population, the US, UK, France, and Germany pressured Vilnius to ease tensions with Moscow by offering concessions and to cease the passing of anti-Soviet laws. All right, so this is exactly what I talked about yesterday when I said that if you watch that Gabriel Landsberg's videos, I don't think he says it there, but it's known. Again, you can Google this, ChatGPT it, whatever. They asked us to go on a pause in our fight for independence, and actually re-independence, because we were free nations. Beforehand, we were just occupied illegally by the Soviets twice during World War II, once by the Nazis. The West wants to appease. It's the default knee-jerk reaction of the West to appease dictators. Iceland was the first country to recognize the Baltics and their independence. Norway, Denmark, Argentina. The US came way later as far as recognizing our re-independence. So when I see very heartfelt messages right here, because they're going to start executions right now, all right, for protesters they caught in Iran. It's a brutal regime, way more brutal. And by the way, this is a good argument for not having a theocracy run your government. Okay, so they're going to start right now, even though they're having protests every night and fighting the Ayatollahs every night. They're going to have executions right now in Iran, and they're asking the U.S. to act. I hope the U.S. does. All right, I really hope the U.S. does. But the U.S.'s knee-jerk reaction is to appease. It's to appease dictators, to keep the status quo, to put your revolution on a pause. That's the knee-jerk reaction of the United States, and Germany and France too. Very brave, coming out every night, and executions are planned during the day. There is only the possibility of a crackdown here. There's only the regime will only respond more and more violently until they're toppled. Russia's best friend right here. Russia's best friend and partner, loyal ally. Of course, the Ruskies did nothing for the Syrians. the Venezuelans, the Iranians already once in the summer. It's all about liberty. It's all about liberty here, and it's a in my opinion, at least for us, a very ceremonial day. Right? January 13th is basically hailed in Lithuania, especially because the violence was a little bit later in Latvia, like a week later. Uh, January 20th and the 21st. But in all this time, all right, we were basically the first ones to leave. And I actually shouldn't say the first ones to make moves. I was thinking Azerbaijan had a also, of course, all these, there were violent crackdowns everywhere in the Soviet Union. Azerbaijan had one even a year prior. I looked it up. It was Black January for them in 1990. So it was a year before. And that led as well to what's the word? Lack of credibility of the regime. Uh, in Azerbaijan, I guess there was still a bit more. There was an ethnic tension as well between Armenians and Azeris, and I don't want to say that I'm so well versed in all this stuff to talk about it, but for sure the Soviet state had a role to play there in trying to quelch any movement for freedom or breaking away. So yeah, this is really huge. I hope everybody is paying attention. You know, this lady, very heroic. She's affiliated with a lot of human rights organizations. You know, look there if you want to donate. But every day, more and more people are having the opportunity to break away from regimes here. And, you know, as narcissistic as Trump is, if he wants to be different than what the US did before in a good way, I would say do not appease dictators. That would be step one. Because if they do, you go back right to this problem. They're just going to see it as a big betrayal. Eli Lake is a good commentator. I like him. Just, you know, no point negotiating with fanatics in charge in Iran. Gary Kasparov, one of my favorites, negotiations with dictators are lifelines. Very simple. If this is the tact that the U.S. is actually going to take, then we can say with clear eyes that the U.S., when times get rough, is not actually going to support liberal, independent movements free from dictatorial regimes. They just want to keep the status quo. And we've seen that in Ukraine. A little bit on Ukraine. Again, we'll get back to the charts because Bitcoin is going to keep everybody that's watching this on an even keel. I'm sure of that. But again, this is what they're dealing with right now. I just wonder how long the Russians are going to put up with this oppression. They like to, almost said they like to be oppressed. The better word to say is they suffer well. Russians suffer very well. They'll suffer a long, long, long time. They'll drink a lot of vodka before they decide to do anything. My father, son, and grandson died fighting in the war, and I received the money, but I have one more son, Vladimir Vladimirovich. She's talking to Putin. He tried to rape his girlfriend's daughter, and now he is in prison, but he really wants to go to the war. Please help him. The question is, does she want her raping son out of prison, or does she want the money? It's a disaster society here. It's a disaster. Not as fanatic as Iran, but, you know, these are some of the last regimes standing, and this is a very good chance this winter to overthrow them. I hope they're successful. if anybody thinks that, you know, Russia sort of is going to get a second chance at this as far as a lifeline, I can assure you that they're not going to get it in the Baltics. Okay. Simple headline. We use this word hybrid threat all the time. It's just not good enough. They're at war already. 11 oil tankers. 11 oil tankers have dragged their anchor in the last 2 years to sever cables in the Baltics. They're at war, whether we want to recognize it or they want to recognize it. And of course, the Baltics recognize it. Poland recognizes it. Germany and France. France, unfortunately, has a bankrupt pension fund system, so they're not necessarily going to recognize it, but this is what we're dealing with. And then, you know, in case you thought that they'd decide to be, you know, nice and good, just a few more drone attacks last night, killed 4, blacked out cities, all around Ukraine. This is just hilarious Twitter. I mean, this guy is one of the cheap propagandists. Ruski asshole. This guy does not much better. 2.8 million followers. Not that I really, honestly, I don't even intend to compete with it. I'm just saying my piece now because this is where we are in the world. I do want to show you one more thing about Hungary, which is again very, very. It's going to be very, very interesting what's happening there in April. I've been saying this for a while now. Jay in Kiev, which has a lot of good followers, great follower here, says it as well. You know, this is Viktor Orban's opponent right here, Peter Magyar. And likely the most suppressed X account on the entire platform. He's got 24.8 thousand followers. I have almost as much as him, or maybe the same as. I don't even know how many followers I have. There you go. It's how much I pay attention to Twitter. The candidate that's miles ahead of Putin and Trump's favorite kleptocrat, Viktor Orban, in the polls. It's very possible that Orban is just as sheltered as Putin. Orban might not even know how behind he is in the polls based on some of the agitprop that his goons keep pushing, like saying that they didn't register in time for the actually this isn't the tweet I wanted to show, saying that they didn't register in time for the election. Just all basic Soviet stuff. The basic Soviet stuff, as Putin does as well, it says any opposition member, we're going to find problems in your paperwork, and then you're not going to be able to run for election. That's like step one of how to quelch democratic elections in these countries. And it's been so botched, basically his support, Magyar's support, that they couldn't suppress it. I gotta find it now. His chief of staff, a guy who's also named Orban, might be getting fired. So it's wild days. Again, is it every 30 years that this happens? Is it every decade that this happens? You know, we had the Arab Spring only 15 years ago. It's a long way. It feels like a long way until April, and I have a lot of hopes that they're going to have a free and fair election, but you know, anything goes. And I'm wondering now about America in November. So as they go to the polls, if they're actually going to have a free and fair election, you know, I heard that during all the Trump mess of 2020, when they had that meeting, I think Patrick Byrne, who was even we've interviewed on the show here, big Bitcoiner, old Overstock CEO, kind of an odd guy, was at this meeting weirdly. And they talked about an option was confiscating the voting machines and declaring martial law. They talked about that as an option. And then later, of course, the chief counsel and all the lawyers that were there trying to get Trump to, adhere to the Constitution, said you can't do that. It has been said already, and I'm not sure exactly when he said it, but he has said later that he wished that he had done that. So anything is on now for democracy in the U.S. Good morning, Francisco. Good morning, Bitcoin Polska. Thank you. I got to keep it with freedom, man. I mean, for a while, it's so wild what's happening. Big anniversary for us. This is a lesson I would keep very, very clear and think about. We all know that Trump doesn't care about democracy at all. It's more just the strongman look now. But even without caring about democracy, will he help end these public executions? That would be something. That would be something. We're going to have to see. I really do need to show this in multiples, not in percentages. But yeah, the Iranian rial is dead. It's gone. Going to have to be reset. Here's sterling. Showed this yesterday. I just want to show it again. A little bit weak. Bitcoin is a little bit weak here. But again, it's still following the power curve. The question is, how long is it going to stay under that curve before popping back up again? It's like a submerged beach ball at this point. Sticking on linear scale here. There you go. You can see how a power curve works on linear. Exponential looks the same, by the way. It's just faster. But there's the power curve on linear. So let's try to. It's really hard to see on linear, but here we are again. Okay. January 13th, close to 92,000. Didn't even mention that yet. Still well below the 126 power curve, putting us somewhere at the 45th percentile. So if, like I said, we still are in the regular cycle, and I think the consensus is mixed from you guys, from what I've heard. Some people think we can hit 60. Some people think the cycles are over still. I'm actually leaning towards the 60K, that this was the cycle and we're going to hit it. But in any event, even going out to the end of the year, the 10th percentile is 57,000. I would say that's still the danger zone. One other thing I wanted to show you. Things are so, I don't know if you guys are watching The Daily Show or if you follow American politics at all. I usually get mine from the comedy shows. I said it before. Night of the Long Knives, early 1930s, Germany. That's the thing to watch out for. If people can just extrajudiciously kill even American citizens and not even be held accountable, have an investigation, maybe even a trial, that's the danger zone for democracy right now in America. To go on the other side of that and not be too negative and too dark and too gloomy, let's look at good old France, our Liberty brothers in love, speaking from my American perspective. It's not like we can't get out of this, but I would say the United States is at risk of something like this. All right, so France is already on their fifth republic. We've had two since the end of the Second World War. Still to this day, the French president has more power than most presidents in Europe, a product of Charles de Gaulle. Not saying necessarily that's bad or good. I mean, French president does not have as much power as, say, Putin, who can do absolutely whatever he wants. There's no power at all from the Duma, no power from the courts, no power from the governors in Russia. There's no private property in Russia. All the platforms that I'm streaming to you on are banned in Russia. So we're not as bad as Russia, but it would be very sad to see, especially on 250 years of American independence, if we move to a very sort of autocratic, dark time where even Congress and the Supreme Court lose power. And this is what we're facing this year. Midterm elections in the U.S. and elections in Hungary, I think, are the biggest elections for the free world. Thank you for the observation. Let's go back. Let me look at log now, because it's always easier. Are you talking about Quantile or this model where I do with the multiples? Have you done this way? Because theoretically, they'll all rise. You're probably talking about the Quantile, right? Where you have straight lines, not these jaggedy. I don't have a Quantile ready at the moment. I've been back and forth with my back end, and I haven't saved it. Let me see. I don't think it's going to work. Oh, I do have a latest. It's not. This isn't going to be updated from even before Christmas, but just so you can see it. So here's the Quantile versus the multiple. And I probably should label these really, really good so you guys can see it. Ah, I see what you mean on the website. Yeah, that's different still. I kind of need to harmonize, but I guess this is the more statistically appropriate, right? And if you look at it, again, this only goes to like January 20th, or sorry, December 19th. Notice how the difference between here and here, and the next line is not as wide as mine. Mine is quite a bit wider. And I say mine mostly because I don't see most people, I don't see a lot of people do this much analysis. I do see this more, which is just a straight up quantile. You know, every band is unique to itself, basically, in this model. So you get kind of bands that hug it more. And by the way, they intersect at weird times, right? So we can see, let me zoom in for you. Look at that. So if we go out to like 2047, just randomly, notice how for example, the power curve is on the OLS, the black play line is 13 million. 100th percentile is almost the same. The 0th percentile is low. But you can find some where it's even, the opposite, right? So like the 90th, 80th percentile goes down to 9. They're not parallel lines, basically, with quantiles. So it's a weird kind of thing. In mine, they're more or less parallel, which might be wrong. But what you get, at least with this, which I like, is you get that you lock in these multiples. And so I can tell you, like, for sure, with certainty, if you're really, really worried, like if you're really, really scared, Bitcoin would never go below, 10% of the power curve, which is right there, the 0, which is a low number. But even the 0 in this model is pretty unlikely, probably the 10th, right? Which, as you see, is about what it hit here. And then if you go there, you get to our 10th. There's the number that's 60,000 by the end of the year, 57,000. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And especially true with this. Sorry, with this. Exactly what you said. The lower bands can rise, the top bands can fall, basically. It's not a perfect science. It updates all the time. But generally, this is a nice rainbow, I would say. And this is probably statistically more accurate than mine. Mine just shows you like real extremes. Yeah, exactly. That's you basically explained the brass tacks of it all. That's the bullish thing about the quantile model. Sorry, here. Is that though the top end levels might not be as extreme all the time, they get lower, but the bottom levels get better. Good morning, Vijo. I am familiar with it, but I haven't looked into it enough, to be honest. He talked about it a little bit on the show that I did with him in December. I would absolutely not discount it. I just don't know enough about the inputs if it's good. Let me pull it up. He's got to like highlight it or something because I can never find it. If you find, can you send me a link or just send me like a keyword because I always lose it. I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at his Twitter. Here it is. This is a version of what you're talking about. So it's this half harmonics, first subharmonic. I just haven't looked at this. I think it's totally possible. It gives a lot of credence to this. This is June 2011. This is November 2013, December 2017, November 2021. And then, so this is somewhere in 2027 is the top. It's totally possible. It's totally possible. I will tell you, though, this is where I deviate just a little bit. Let me show you my PSR analysis, which is price to sales, which is the market cap divided by the total revenue that miners make on an annual basis. And the thing that I find curious is he doesn't give any credence to this bubble. And then again, with this bubble, there were two. I was around here. This actually, this right here, this is June 2011. This pushed me away from Bitcoin, unfortunately, for years, frankly. I remember it very well. I read articles. I was trying to figure out what was going on here. And there was an intraday drop in Bitcoin, like to zero. There were two Mt. Gox hacks, like right before this peak and right after, or maybe both right after. I can't remember. But I find it wild to think that this peak could represent some, statistical importance. I mean, but it's not outlandish, right? You look at it and it's yeah, okay, this is clearly a fundamental top. And by the way, this top paints a lot of the tops in my analysis here. So this 100th percentile, 7.8x, I think it was exactly because of that. If I zoom in, yeah, there it is. So when Bitcoin got to $35 in June 10th, 2011, that was 7.x times the power law. And it's never been that high again. But anyway, to go back to the analysis, yeah, I just haven't looked into the cycles here, but I wouldn't discount it. Would not discount it. It's totally possible. And here's another thing again, though, that gives me pause about the idea. I think there's some fundamental analysis which is better, which is here, which is mine. Again, just from one perspective. So this is the PSR, right? This multiple. All right, that black dotted line. And what that line represents is the market cap divided by the annual revenue that miners make in totality. Okay? Right now it's like $16 billion or something. I can't remember exactly. So the PSR, if you just divide the market cap by that, the PSR is 107. That's the PSR. All right, so you can see it. You can draw a curve on it, which is not a great curve, by the way, but you can draw a curve. But anyway, if you notice, forget the curves even. Just notice when we get to extreme levels in this PSR, the November top is not one of them. So don't look at prices on the rainbow. Let's just look at the PSR. Notice that it's the March top. This also gives me pause. And I think other people have agreed with me, not necessarily using this analysis, but they call the second top kind of the scam top, which I tend to agree with. Like the real boom, meaning Bitcoin was shooting ahead of its skis at the time, was clearly, in my mind, March. And then you go back to his analysis, and this top isn't even like factored in. Again, maybe it doesn't need to be. I just, there's no one model that's correct. And this is interesting. This is interesting. So that's how I'm looking at it. I'm open to it, but I think we're we have other indicators to also show other things, which are showing booms that are, a boom by definition is sort of an unsustainable, it's unrealistic representation of price. It's a bubble. Bitcoin's had plenty of them. And in my opinion, the second top was not, did not fit the other, did not fit all the data there. What could be interesting, though, is if we just keep going up all the way to his 2027 level. Does he provide a month there when it could hit? Mr. Timmer here is kind of quite a bit off on a lot of his things. He's measured Bitcoin as an exponential often. I don't necessarily, have much to say about him, but he tends to be kind of off on a lot of his models. Stick with money or debt for sure. Good morning, Roberto. Thank you. Let's pull it up. I have to actually search for it hard code because I can't even open the links that you send, but I'm... Okay. Oh shit, is this it? Or did I not? Log periodic structure. Yeah, mid 2027, let's say June, age 18 and a half years. Base case 250K, bull case 300. Tail end outcome of 500. If you mark that on this, anyway, June 2027. Let's get close to his numbers, so 90th. Base case, he said 200, so it's already, it's basically these levels, isn't it? Something like that. Totally possible. The problem with this analysis, and one that I'm not as versed in, is doing actual timing. I'm a simple guy. That's why I like the 4-year. It's totally possible. It really is. I just don't have much more to say than that. But this would be the level, roughly. Which, if you look here, right on. It would agree with my levels. And that would be cool. I mean, it would be cool to find another cycle that maps on to what Bitcoin is doing. Good morning, John. You live in Vilnius. Welcome. Welcome to the Baltics. Hope you're safe and well as well. Big day for Baltic Remembrance of Freedom, as I talked about at the top of the show. And I don't want to repeat myself for people that are just joining, but again, the West told us to take a pause. The Lithuanians, the Latvians, the Estonians, the Azeris, when we were moving towards freedom in the early months of 1990 into 1991. And I think about this a lot right now when it's happening in Iran. Iranians abroad are asking for help from the superpower. And we know for a fact the president of this superpower doesn't care about democracy, but he does care about the recognition. I'll take it. I'll take it any way we can get it, frankly. We're going to see. Gold euro. Interestingly, ahead of schedule on the euro. Surprised. So just to remind you, dollar says we're a little bit behind schedule. Euro says we're ahead of schedule. All the others say we're behind schedule. Sterling, Iranian rial, Turkish lira, way behind schedule. That means we are 16, 17 times higher than the Turkish central bank's balance sheet. We should be 100 times higher. That's what it's saying. That's how bad the performance of the Turkish lira has been. And again, I put this on here. I don't talk about local politics too much, but in other countries monetarily, because I don't know, frankly, but Erdogan, the dictator, did fire their central bank governor right there, who decided to fight inflation with lower interest rates, which is a novel idea. So there you go. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 balance sheets where we're under, 1 where we're over. Ahead of schedule, that is. And this one, just like the US, is about to print more. Anybody have any other questions? Anything you want to see? I'll remind you, as I have been doing every day, it's not coming tomorrow. I hope to do it this quarter, but we'll get you much more access to these charts, much more. And I think you'll really enjoy it. Some for free, some paid. Gonna try to make a little bit of money on this work that I've been doing for 10 years. Probably more even. But I'll keep saying it because I know a lot of you guys want to have different views than what I just show on YouTube. Bitcoin system is worth 75 trillion Turkish lira. At its peak, it was worth 94 trillion Turkish lira. Very exciting. Way bigger than the Turkish balance sheet itself. You have not missed BTC Gold. Let me put it on for you. And I did not know that silver overtook Nvidia, so good call. I probably can't pull up a great one on silver market cap right now because I don't have it ready, but I'll check it. Wait, isn't Nvidia like... Wow, is silver that much? I guess it is. You just going for my website? I didn't even think about it. Christ. If that's a headline, John, the only thing I would say is I do have this, which is a little bit more refined than you'll find on the media. So I don't include industrial use, and my estimate there is only 2.65 trillion. Wait. That looks like an error, doesn't it? Let me take it back off. Because I see 31. I think that's just a formatting error. 2.65 trillion. I love finding errors just when I'm streaming live. Let me check. Formatting. All right. I think this is correct, but somehow I realized I have a error on my table that it resets symbols. So thank you for showing. This is 31. Somehow this got copied over. This is 31 billion ounces. 31 billion ounces of silver, I believe, is 2.65 trillion. But if you doubled it, it would be more than Nvidia. Nvidia is worth $4.49 trillion in market cap. And it's true that if you took the total amount of silver ever mined in the history of the world, it would be double this. But I backed that out because literally half of the silver ever mined is like completely gone. I mean, it's used, it's in junk. It's possible you can salvage it, especially these prices, by the way. But, it's constantly recycled back into, conduits, computers, tablets, iPhones. So that's why I use this number. But again, I got to fix this. It's 31 billion ounces is the native number. This should correct in a couple moments. It's a 31 billion ounces. I have to refresh the cache. Anyway, thank you for that side tangent. I don't see the link. It is remarkable. Yeah, it is a remarkable thing. Let me get BTC Gold for you and others that want to see it. One second, it's coming. 20 ounces remains the same. Gold bug is getting a great deal. Great deal. Trend says 65 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. Market says 20. Incredible. This to me is the target. I mean, not the target, but the base, like the bargain basement. And as you see here, back 3 years ago, Bitcoin was cheaper by half in gold terms still. So even amidst all the marketing for gold, the gold bugs, gold is still twice as expensive from where it was here at 9 ounces 50 in December 2022. Yeah, no, I believe it. I mean, a lot of the gold bugs, you know, Peter Schiff's loving it. He says gold is getting back to its what's like kind of the way he's saying it, like the deserved value of gold finally. And it is true, we are on a just a wild bull for gold that Bitcoin has really never seen in its short life vis-a-vis gold, but I think this is a stronger description of what Bitcoin is doing. It's not that bad. Could get worse, but it's not that bad, and gold's going to revert as well. I'll show you the gold in dollars. I hope. What is going on? Let me reset that. Maybe I can't show you gold in dollars right now. We're still not to the max. The max would be 2.5x the trend, exponential trend of gold, and we're not there yet. Ah. Totally agree with you, John. You know, geopolitically, people are wondering why Bitcoin is not necessarily rallying, especially with the craziness, but I'm sure everybody notices that political time is moving very, very fast. You know, in 2 weeks, it might be another country's revolution. Who knows? Bitcoin cycles move much faster than gold and silver. It's possible that gold and silver cycles will go quicker as well, but I tend to think not. Just the nature of building out a gold mine, building out a silver mine. A lot of gold and silver miners are more profitable now than they ever were, but that's not always going to be the case, especially if the price retraces and people are wondering why I'm paying $4,000 for this gold, whatever, ounce. if they want to use it as jewelry or whatever. So never know how long this gold bull could go, but it's super, super hot right now. Again, this is wrong here for silver. The dollar is correct. Dollar value is correct, but this is 31 billion ounces. And, you know, this gold value, available gold, like a year, 2 years ago, this was less than 15 trillion. Now it's $27 trillion. All the gold in the world. Also less industrial uses, by the way, which is about 15%, as opposed to gold having 50% stripped off here, as opposed to silver having 50% stripped off. So it is incredible. You know, here's the base monies of all the other assets, currencies. Much lower. Top four in the 5 trillion range. So there you go, man. Buy some Bitcoin. Goodbye. That's a good investment. Also, I wonder. I haven't heard the only talk of gold that I've heard out of Iran right now is the Ayatollahs moving gold to Moscow for safekeeping. Like that's going to work out for them. You know, this is the time when gold bugs would say it was, you know, gold will shine. But is it really shining during this revolution where like, you know, executions are being threatened or even stated going to happen already from these protests? You know, I think Bitcoin would be a much more valuable asset to use during these times. For whatever reason, paying a border guard, I don't know. Surviving on the ground, just like they do in, you know, Argentina. Stable coins seem to be pretty popular, but seems to be have much more utility than gold. Yeah, see, exactly. We know how this is going to work out. Good morning, Sandra. What are they saying? Because I haven't listened in a while. I'm happy to stay with the numbers, just looking at the charts of Bitcoin. Yeah, I've heard he's good. I agree with you, John. I fully agree with you. Are they mentioning Bitcoin, Sandro? Yeah, that's wild. Are they talking about it in terms of these revolutions? Yeah. Another common mistake that I see is, you know, we're going to have a newer, faster, more efficient, certainly electronic system, but gold is going to be the underpinning of that. Yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, the Iranians have taken their looted gold to Moscow, of all places. John, what are you doing in Lithuania? Or if you don't want to tell me, shoot me an email. I'll try to come down and see you. It's not a far drive from where I am. Yeah, that's the key point, isn't it? This is the key point. In fact, I think I have listened to this podcast. Let me make sure this is the one because I've heard about him. But yeah, the 100-year pivot. Yep. 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 it's it's hilarious. Everybody thinks that they can sort of shoehorn in like some new version of gold, but electronically, digitally, also maybe throw in, a consumer price index, talk about some famous physicists here and there. I'll check it out. That's a good point. We are. And it almost makes you wonder, by the way, if all this violence is just a result of the debt at the end of the day. Wouldn't discount that. However, as I've said before, and I have to keep saying, this is not a defense of the system. We have a lot worse currencies than the dollar. All right. It's really not a defense. Where is it? It's not a defense of the system. I can finally get the gold chart up for you, by the way. So as Donald Trump wants to take over the Federal Reserve, it's just like this clown world. He's got room. Powell gave him a lot of room. Historically speaking, this was the worst. The worst time was in January, December. It might have been December, November of 2021. 28.3%. Theoretically, that's the worst time for the relationship of debt to money. And they're going to print. So he has a full 10 percentage points and more, right? To get back up there. That's what they're going to do. Here you go, John. This is the record again. This would be, you remember how I was talking about on the my multiple analysis, how these are literally the most extreme lines you could draw, right? Being 7.8x the power trend on the top or 0.1x on the bottom, which is very rare, right? If you just look, take away all lines other than those lines, extremely rare in Bitcoin to hit these lines. Okay, even in 2017, we did not hit it. we might have not, or might have been, yeah, we did not hit it actually here. It painted the number 7.8. Going back to our discussion about the Stephen Perno money or debt cycles in this top, 35 bucks per Bitcoin, June 2011. So it's just very rare to expect to ever go back to 7.8x the power law curve of Bitcoin, which is here. Very rare. Now pulling that gold chart up, if I can find it again, I'm doing the same thing but over much more data and over an exponential trend. And I think probably based on what, how crazy the world is, we will do something like this. We'll pull it up to a higher multiple. I'm not showing you the multiples, unfortunately, in here, but it's like 2.5x. So we're not there yet, but we're going to do it. This is going to do it. This is a daily update, by the way. So this is like basically today's gold price. We will break this record. Will we break it for 6 months, a year? I don't know, but it's not going to 50,000. At least I don't think so. I think you're right. Here's Grant Williams, by the way, if anyone wants to watch what Sandro was talking about or listen. I have listened to the 100-year pivot series, but the one that he is talking about is it here, Sandro? In any event, people can find it. He's big on gold. It's a good point. Listen to TradFi and see how out of touch they are with what actually can handle 21st century tech. Anything else, guys? Thanks, John. You too. Ping me. Like I said, ping me. Shoot me an email. Info at Crypto Voices or info at Porkopolis if you're around the Baltics. Thank you for the recommendation, Sandro. Everybody, take care. Have a good day. I'm going to leave you with this again. The U.S. told us to pause. The UK, France, Germany told us to pause 35 years ago during our re-independence movement, breaking away from the evil Soviet Union. We'll see how the U.S. responds to public executions coming right back for these for this revolution that's going on right now in Iran. Stay safe, everybody. Huddle on. Have a great Tuesday. Slava Ukraine. Talk to you later.